If you disappear the right way, she won't forget you. She'll feel you. Most men panic after a breakup. They text, they check her stories, they post things hoping she notices, they try to prove they're fine while secretly hoping she reaches out. And every move they make pushes her further away. Here's what you were never taught, my friend. The moment you walk away calmly, without drama, without begging, without trying to win the last word, something shifts inside her. At first, she feels relief, space, freedom. That's normal. But then silence starts doing something powerful. Contrast appears. The emotional pattern she was used to suddenly vanishes. And the human mind hates unfinished emotional loops. This isn't manipulation, it's psychology. When you stop reacting, stop chasing, and start rebuilding yourself with discipline and control, you create scarcity. Scarcity creates curiosity. Curiosity slowly turns into emotional tension. And tension, when mixed with memory, can become desire again. But here's the part most men sabotage. They break the silence too soon. They reach out from weakness. They show they're still attached. And the entire psychological process collapses. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what happens in her mind after you disappear the right way. The stages, the mistakes, the identity shift that changes everything. And why the real power begins the moment you no longer need her to come back. Let's get into it. Number 1. Disappear without drama. Let's get something straight, folks. If you want her to feel your absence, you cannot leave like a wounded man. You leave like a man who has options, self-control and direction. Most men disappear loudly. They post quotes. They unfollow. They block. They send one last emotional message explaining everything she did wrong. That's not disappearing. That's performing. Real power is quiet. When you disappear without drama, you remove emotional stimulation instantly, and the human brain reacts strongly to sudden contrast. In the file we broke down, the key idea is psychological contrast. When a pattern suddenly stops, the mind notices. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. James, 46, from Denver, was dating Melissa, 42, for 8 months. Things started cooling off. She became distant, slower replies, less enthusiasm. Eventually, she said she needed space. Now, most men in James's position would negotiate. They would try to fix it, convince her, reassure her. Instead, James did something different. He said, "I understand. Take care of yourself." Calm tone, no sarcasm, no guilt, no speech. Then he vanished. No checking in, no liking her photos, no late-night texts, no indirect stories meant to provoke jealousy. For the first week, Melissa felt relief. That's normal. When tension exists in a relationship, distance feels like oxygen. But then something else happened. Silence became loud. Her phone stopped lighting up with his name. The emotional pattern she was used to disappeared. And that's when the evaluation phase begins. Let's be honest, my friend. When you stay available, she never experiences contrast. When you're always there, your presence has no weight. Disappearing without drama creates weight. This isn't manipulation, it's human nature. We value what feels scarce. We reflect when stimulation stops. And most importantly, we question decisions when the emotional noise fades. Now, here's where most men sabotage this stage. They disappear physically, but not emotionally. They stalk her stories. They ask mutual friends about her. They sit at home obsessing. That energy leaks, and eventually they break. A Stoic man understands something deeper. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Disappearing without drama means accepting the outcome. You are not disappearing to force her back. You are stepping back to regain control of yourself. That mindset shift changes everything. Back to James. Instead of waiting, he started lifting again, cleaned up his diet, reconnected with 2 old friends, focused on a work project he had been postponing. Not to impress Melissa, not to post about it, but because his identity required rebuilding. 2 weeks passed, Then 3. Melissa began replaying memories. The emotional contrast sharpened. She wondered why he wasn't chasing. She checked his social media. Quiet, no emotional posts, no desperation. That uncertainty created curiosity. And curiosity is the first crack in emotional certainty. Understand this clearly, folks. When you disappear without drama, you remove emotional reassurance. You remove predictability. And the human mind struggles with unfinished patterns. But here's the rule. You cannot disappear as a tactic. You disappear because you refuse to beg for attention. You disappear because your dignity matters. You disappear because your value does not decrease just because someone steps back. That's strength. If you've ever wanted to send that extra text but held your composure instead, type this in the comments. I choose silence. Stay with me, because what happens next inside her mind is not relief. It's something much more powerful. Number 2. Let silence create tension. Now we go deeper, folks. Disappearing without drama removes stimulation. But silence is what creates tension, and tension is what reactivates attraction. Most men are terrified of silence. They think if they don't reach out, she'll forget them. They believe love must be maintained through constant reassurance. But here's the psychological truth buried inside the file we analyzed. When emotional interaction suddenly stops, the brain doesn't relax. It searches. At first, she feels relief, space, a sense of control. But once that relief stabilizes, the absence starts echoing. The mind replays conversations, reconstructs moments, questions, decisions. Silence becomes a mirror. Let's be direct, my friend. When you stop texting, stop reacting, stop explaining, you create an unfinished emotional loop. And the human mind hates unfinished loops. It wants closure. It wants certainty. When it doesn't get it, it generates tension. That tension is not created by words. It's created by lack of access. Epictetus said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In this context, that means being willing to look indifferent, being willing to look unaffected, even if she assumes you've moved on. Because silence is misunderstood by emotional minds. When you go quiet, she starts filling the gaps herself. Is he talking to someone else? Did he detach already? Was I more invested than I thought? These questions don't arise when you keep feeding reassurance. They arise when predictability disappears. Now understand something critical. Silence only creates tension when it's clean. If you disappear but still watch her stories instantly, you break the illusion. If you indirectly post emotional quotes, you leak attachment. If you ask mutual friends about her, you're still participating. True silence is psychological withdrawal. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In relationships, that means not reacting emotionally when things shift, not chasing when distance appears, not scrambling when certainty dissolves. Silence demonstrates emotional regulation, and emotional regulation is attractive because it signals strength. Here's where the deeper shift happens. As days pass without contact, she begins comparing her expectation to reality. She expected you to reach out. She expected you to fight for her attention. When that doesn't happen, cognitive dissonance appears. The story she told herself about you no longer matches your behavior. That creates tension. Tension leads to curiosity. Curiosity leads to monitoring. Monitoring leads to emotional resurfacing. But here's the key, folks. You cannot use silence as punishment. If you go silent with resentment, it's still attachment. If you go silent hoping she suffers, you're still emotionally hooked. Silence must come from acceptance. You accept the outcome. You accept uncertainty. You accept that she may never return. And, paradoxically, that detachment is what increases your perceived value. Because now you are not seeking validation. You are stable without her response. That stability is rare, and rarity creates tension. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." When you are brave enough to sit in silence without reaching for reassurance, you free yourself from emotional dependency. And that freedom is felt, not through words, through absence. If you've ever felt the urge to break silence but chose discipline instead, type this in the comments: I control myself. Stick with me, because next, we're going to talk about what silence does to her perception of your value over time. Number 3. Stop chasing her validation. Let's be brutally honest, folks. The moment you start chasing her validation, you lower your value. And I don't mean that in some toxic alpha way. I mean psychologically. When a man constantly seeks reassurance, approval, or emotional confirmation from a woman, he shifts the power dynamic. He becomes the one trying to be chosen, instead of the one who chooses. In the breakdown from the file, one of the core shifts happens when you stop needing her response to feel stable. That's where perceived value begins to rise, because validation seeking communicates insecurity. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. Anthony, 51, recently separated, met Rachel, 45, at a networking event in Phoenix. They connected fast. Chemistry was strong. But after a few weeks, Rachel started pulling back slightly. Slower replies, fewer emojis, less enthusiasm. Anthony felt the shift immediately. Instead of staying grounded, he leaned in harder. He sent longer texts, asked if everything was okay, tried to clarify where they stood. He wanted reassurance that he still mattered. Now understand this clearly, my friend. Every time he asked for validation, he confirmed doubt. Rachel didn't consciously think he's weak, but her nervous system registered something. His energy shifted from calm certainty to emotional dependency. Attraction requires polarity, and validation seeking flattens polarity. Let's be real here. When you need her to confirm your worth, you silently communicate that you don't fully believe in your own value. That creates subtle pressure, and pressure reduces desire. A Stoic man operates differently. He does not ask, "Do you still want me?" He observes behavior. If her effort drops, he matches energy. If her attention fades, he redirects his focus, not to punish, not to manipulate, but because his self-respect demands alignment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself." When your emotional stability is internal, you do not scramble for external reassurance. Back to Anthony. After a week of over-texting, he stopped. Not in anger, in clarity. He returned to his routine: gym, work, golf with friends. He stopped analyzing her response times. And something interesting happened. Rachel reached out, not because he begged, because the validation loop stopped. When you stop feeding someone the comfort of being your emotional center, they feel the shift. They feel the absence of reassurance they grew accustomed to, and suddenly they start seeking it. That's the inversion most men never understand. When you chase validation, she relaxes. When you withdraw validation, she evaluates. Here's the deeper psychology. Humans are wired to value what feels uncertain yet meaningful. If you are constantly confirming your interest, constantly asking for clarity, constantly proving your feelings, you remove uncertainty. And without uncertainty, desire softens. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life." Emotional freedom means you can care without clinging, you can desire without needing, and women feel that difference instantly. If you text and she responds slowly, you do not double text. If she seems distant, you do not interrogate. You observe. You adjust. You remain centered. Because when you stop chasing her validation, you stop negotiating your worth. And that shift alone can reactivate attraction. If you've ever caught yourself seeking reassurance and decided to pull back instead, type this in the comments: I validate myself. Stay with me, because next we're going to talk about how your absence begins reshaping her perception of your value in ways she can't ignore. Number 4. Make her feel the absence. Now we're stepping into the phase most men misunderstand, folks. Disappearing is one thing, but making her feel the absence is another, because absence is not about distance, it's about contrast. When you were present in her life, you provided emotional stimulation, attention, conversation, consistency, maybe even leadership and direction. When that stimulation vanishes cleanly, the nervous system has to recalibrate. At first, like we said earlier, there may be relief. That's natural, but relief is temporary. What follows is awareness, and awareness is where absence starts doing its work. Let's be clear about something. You do not make her feel absence by sending reminders. You don't post cryptic quotes. You don't suddenly show off online. That's noise. Absence works best when it's quiet. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In this stage, that means you stop performing your growth. You simply grow. When you stop reaching out, stop reacting, and stop participating in emotional back and forth, the rhythm she was used to collapses. Humans are pattern-driven. We adapt to consistent emotional availability. When that pattern breaks, the brain looks for explanation. Where did he go? Why isn't he reacting? Why doesn't he seem affected? That questioning is the beginning of emotional tension. Here's the deeper psychology from the original framework. When presence is constant, value feels ordinary. When presence disappears, value becomes visible. Scarcity activates attention, and attention reactivates emotional memory. But this only works if your absence is authentic. If you disappear while secretly waiting for her to post something, if you vanish but constantly check her activity, if you pretend to move on while emotionally stuck, you are still tethered. And tethered men do not create absence, they create delayed reactions. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Absence only creates impact when it's rooted in self-control, not strategy. You withdraw not to punish. You withdraw because you refuse to negotiate your dignity. Now here's what happens internally for her. After relief fades, she begins replaying shared experiences. Emotional highlights feel amplified because they are no longer current. Memory becomes selective. Positive moments rise more easily than daily friction. This is how emotional recalibration works. Silence removes ongoing irritation. Memory preserves emotional intensity, and that shift can transform certainty into doubt. But I want you to understand something important, my friend. This is not about revenge. This is not about making her suffer. This is about allowing reality to unfold without you forcing it. If she truly valued your presence, absence will surface it. If she didn't, absence will reveal that too. Either way, you gain clarity. And clarity is power. Now, let me speak directly to the men who are serious about mastering this level of emotional discipline. If you want deeper breakdowns on psychological timing, detachment frameworks, and advanced Stoic strategies that we cannot fully unpack in public videos, consider joining the membership. Inside, we go beyond surface-level advice. We dissect patterns. We build internal strength. We focus on identity, not tactics. Because tactics without identity collapse under pressure. Back to the core point. Making her feel the absence means stepping out of the emotional equation completely. No validation, no reassurance, no reaction, just growth and composure, Seneca said. Sometimes even to live is an act of courage. In this context, courage means allowing silence to do the work without interfering. If you've ever realized that your constant presence made you easier to overlook, type this in the comments. I let them feel it. Don't go anywhere, because next we're going to break down how absence shifts her perception of your value in ways she cannot ignore. Number 5. Trigger the comparison effect. Now we're entering one of the most powerful psychological shifts in this entire process, folks. The comparison effect. When you disappear cleanly and stop chasing validation, something subtle begins to happen inside her mind. She doesn't just miss you, she starts comparing. And comparison is dangerous when you've raised your value. Let's break this down clearly. When you were constantly present, constantly available, constantly reassuring, she didn't have to evaluate you. You were just there, familiar, predictable. But once you step back and your presence is removed, the brain fills the vacuum with contrast. Contrast leads to comparison. Comparison leads to reassessment. Let me give you a real example. Robert, 54, owns a small logistics company in Atlanta. He dated Karen, 49, for a year. Toward the end, she began distancing herself emotionally. Less affection, less effort. Eventually, she decided to take a break. Robert didn't argue. He didn't plead. He didn't try to prove himself. He simply accepted it and redirected his focus. He tightened his routine, lost 15 pounds, reinvested in his business, started traveling again with old friends. No dramatic social media, no emotional displays, just quiet improvement. Meanwhile, Karen began dating casually. And here's where the comparison effect activated. The new men were attentive, some were charming, but they lacked Robert's grounded stability. They lacked his decisiveness. They lacked the calm energy she had grown used to, but taken for granted. Now here's the psychological truth. You are often undervalued when you are constantly accessible. Once you remove yourself, she experiences other dynamics. And every new interaction becomes a measuring stick. That's comparison. And if you've grown instead of stagnated, you win that comparison without saying a word. Let's be honest, my friend. This isn't about jealousy. It's about perception. When you elevate your health, your confidence, your composure, your emotional control, you increase perceived value. When she encounters other men who react emotionally, chase validation, or lack direction, the contrast sharpens. And suddenly, the version of you she walked away from looks different in hindsight. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. Her leaving becomes the catalyst for your growth. And your growth becomes the silent competitor against every other man she meets." Now, here's the critical part. You cannot trigger comparison by trying to provoke it. If you post photos with other women to make her jealous, that's insecurity. If you send subtle hints that you're thriving just to get a reaction that's still chasing, the comparison effect works best when it's organic, when she sees or hears through natural channels that you are calm, progressing unbothered, not performing, evolving. Back to Robert. 3 months later, Karen reached out casually, not dramatic, not desperate, just curiosity disguised as friendliness. The emotional tone had shifted. Why? Because she had experienced contrast. She had compared, and she realized something. The stability she once viewed as ordinary was actually rare. That's the power of absence combined with growth. When you remain stagnant, comparison works against you. When you rise, comparison works for you. If you've ever turned a setback into motivation instead of self-pity, type this in the comments, I level up. Stay with me because next we're going to talk about how emotional detachment flips the power dynamic completely. Number 6. Become emotionally unreachable. Now this is where the real shift happens, folks. Up until now, we've talked about silence, absence, comparison, but none of that works long-term if you're still emotionally available in the same way. You must become emotionally unreachable, and let's define that clearly. Emotionally unreachable does not mean cold. It does not mean bitter. It does not mean pretending not to care. It means she no longer has automatic access to your emotional reactions. When she pulls away, you don't chase. When she posts something provocative, you don't react. When she reaches out casually, you don't immediately open up like nothing happened. That unpredictability changes everything. In the original psychological framework, the turning point happens when she senses that your attachment has weakened, not because you're playing games, but because you've genuinely shifted your center of gravity back to yourself. Most men remain emotionally reachable even after they disappear physically. They don't text, but if she messages, they respond instantly. They don't call, but they're internally waiting. They say they've moved on, but their mood still depends on her actions. That's not detachment. That's delayed dependency. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Becoming emotionally unreachable means you no longer allow her behavior to dictate your emotional state. That energy is felt. Here's what happens inside her mind when she senses it. At first, she may test the waters, a light message, a casual check-in, maybe even something nostalgic. If you respond with the same emotional intensity as before, the dynamic resets. But if your tone is steady, composed, slightly reserved, something clicks. He's different. Not angry, not cold, just not as accessible. That uncertainty creates depth, because attraction thrives on mystery combined with stability. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life." Emotional reachability tied to one person is a form of quiet captivity. When you free yourself from needing her validation, your presence changes. You become selective instead of reactive. Now let's clarify something important, my friend. You are not becoming emotionally unreachable to punish her. You are becoming emotionally disciplined to protect yourself. There's a difference. When you detach internally, you no longer operate from fear of loss, and fear of loss is what drives most men to overtext, over-explain, and over-pursue. When fear dissolves, power returns. And here's the paradox. The moment she senses you are no longer emotionally hooked, her investment often increases, because now she cannot predict your reactions, she cannot assume your availability, she cannot rely on emotional control, and control once lost triggers pursuit. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Emotional bravery means allowing space without trying to manage the outcome. You respond when appropriate. You don't overshare. You don't rehash the past. You don't seek reassurance. You remain centered. That centered energy is rare. And rarity increases perceived value. Understand this clearly, folks. When you become emotionally unreachable, you shift from being the one waiting to being the one evaluated. You're no longer asking, will she come back? You're asking, does she align with the man I'm becoming? That shift alone can transform the entire dynamic. If you've ever felt the moment where you stopped caring about controlling the outcome and started focusing on yourself, instead, type this in the comments. I choose detachment. Stay with me, because next we're going to talk about how curiosity slowly turns into desire when uncertainty lingers long enough. Number 7. Rebuild your sexual value. Now we're going to talk about something most men avoid, folks. Sexual value. Not money, not status, not words. Sexual value is how she feels in your presence. And when a woman walks away, one of the biggest hidden reasons she may not feel urgency to return is because your sexual edge softened. Let's be honest. Comfort kills polarity if you're not careful. When you were together, maybe you became predictable. Maybe you stopped leading physically. Maybe you lost that quiet intensity that first attracted her. The absence phase gives you a rare opportunity to rebuild. Let me show you what that looks like in real life. Daniel, 48, from San Diego, was with Monica, 44, for nearly 2 years. Over time, he got comfortable. Fewer gym sessions, less attention to style. Conversations became routine. Physical chemistry faded into habit. When Monica pulled back, Daniel initially felt blindsided, but after the silence phase, something clicked. He realized he had let himself slide. So instead of obsessing over her, he rebuilt himself. He tightened his frame physically, dropped body fat, started dressing sharper, but more importantly, he rebuilt his posture, his eye contact, his tone. He stopped seeking reassurance. He stopped explaining himself. He started carrying himself differently. That's sexual value. Sexual value is composed energy. It's grounded masculinity. It's the ability to hold eye contact without flinching. It's moving slowly instead of nervously. It's speaking calmly instead of over-talking. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are desperate, your energy becomes desperate. If your thoughts are focused, disciplined, self-directed, your presence changes. Women feel that before they analyze it. Now, here's the critical part. You cannot rebuild sexual value by trying to make her jealous. Posting photos with random women, that's insecurity. Talking loudly about dates, that's performance. Real sexual value is silent. It's visible in your body language. It's visible in how you walk into a room. It's visible in how little you react. Back to Daniel. 3 months after the breakup, he ran into Monica at a mutual friend's birthday gathering. He didn't approach immediately. He didn't hover. He greeted her calmly, made brief eye contact, slight smile, then continued socializing. Monica noticed. His shoulders were broader, his movements slower, his energy less available. She leaned in during conversation. She laughed more. She touched his arm while speaking. Why? Because contrast met transformation. Let's be clear, my friend. When you rebuild your sexual value, you stop radiating, "Please choose me." You start radiating, "I am already chosen." That shift is magnetic. Sexual value is not about being aggressive. It's about being unbothered. It's about having direction. It's about being comfortable with silence. When she senses that you no longer orbit her emotionally, and at the same time you look stronger, sharper, more composed, the comparison effect intensifies. She doesn't just miss you, she questions her decision. If you've ever used pain as fuel to improve your body, your mindset, and your presence, type this in the comments. I rebuild stronger. Stay with me, because next we're going to talk about how curiosity slowly turns into desire when she realizes she can't predict you anymore. Number 8. Let curiosity turn into desire. Now we arrive at the turning point, folks. Curiosity is not desire, but if handled correctly, curiosity becomes desire. And this is where most men ruin the process. After silence, after absence, after emotional detachment and visible growth, something begins forming in her mind. Questions, uncertainty, subtle intrigue. What is he doing? Is he really okay? Has he changed? Is he seeing someone else? That's curiosity. But curiosity alone is neutral. It only turns into desire when it meets emotional tension and restraint. Let's break this down clearly. When she reaches out after a period of silence, your response determines everything. If you over-engage, over-explain, or emotionally reopen too quickly, curiosity collapses into comfort, and comfort rarely fuels desire. But if you respond calmly, briefly, confidently, without rushing back into old dynamics, curiosity deepens. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." In this context, that means you do not retreat back into the old version of yourself just because she tests the waters. You remain the evolved man. Curiosity thrives on mystery combined with stability. Too much mystery feels unstable. Too much stability feels predictable. The balance is what creates magnetism. When she senses you are no longer emotionally dependent, no longer predictable, no longer easily accessed, her nervous system stays slightly activated. That activation is tension, and tension, when paired with attraction, becomes desire. Now here's the deeper psychological layer from the framework we analyzed. Humans are drawn toward unresolved emotional experiences. If the breakup felt unfinished, if your absence created contrast, if your transformation introduced new uncertainty, her mind attempts to resolve that tension. Resolution often requires reconnection. But here's the key, my friend. You do not accelerate the process. You allow it to unfold. If she asks how you've been, you answer briefly. If she suggests meeting, you agree calmly. If she reminisces, you don't immediately romanticize the past. You stay composed. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly. Desire that rebuilds through tension is stronger than desire that returns through desperation." Understand something powerful. When she begins imagining you differently than before, that's when desire activates. Not because you convinced her, but because her internal narrative shifted. She starts picturing you with other options. She starts imagining you stronger. She starts wondering what it would feel like to be close again. And imagination is fuel for desire. But if you rush to fill every silence, answer every message instantly, or reveal your full emotional availability, imagination dies. Desire needs space to breathe. That's why patience is dominance. Not loud dominance, calm dominance. You do not chase her curiosity, you let it mature. And when curiosity matures without immediate resolution, it often transforms into longing. Seneca wrote, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." If you are constantly available, you lose edge. If you are selectively present, you gain gravity. This stage is about gravity. She begins leaning back toward you emotionally because she cannot fully predict you anymore. And unpredictability combined with composure is intoxicating. If you've ever realized that saying less increased her interest more than saying everything, type this in the comments. I let them wonder. Stay with me because next, we're going to talk about the final psychological shift that determines whether she simply reappears or comes back with intensity. Number 9. Detach and shift the power. Now we reach the psychological pivot, folks. Detachment is where power shifts. Not fake detachment, not silent resentment, not pretending you don't care. Real detachment. The moment you truly accept that she may never come back, something changes inside you. Your tone shifts, your body language shifts, your reactions slow down, you stop managing the outcome, and that's when power returns. Let's break this down through something real. Thomas, 53, from Charlotte, had been with Nicole, 47, for almost 3 years. When she ended things, Thomas did the first few steps right. He stayed silent, focused on himself, rebuilt physically and emotionally. But internally, he was still hoping. Every workout, every business win, every improved habit had one hidden objective: get her back. That subtle attachment kept him emotionally reachable. 3 months later, Nicole reached out, casual, friendly, testing the waters. Thomas responded calmly, but his internal world lit up. He started anticipating her texts again, started adjusting his schedule around potential meetups. She sensed it, and the dynamic shifted back. Now, here's where the real transformation happened. Thomas realized he wasn't detached yet. He was performing growth, but still emotionally invested in the outcome. So, he made a deeper decision. He stopped visualizing reconciliation. He stopped imagining scenarios. He started asking a different question. Do I even want this dynamic again? That's when the power shift occurred. Let's be direct, my friend. When you detach from the need for her return, you stop negotiating your value. You stop reacting from fear. You stop giving her subconscious control over your emotional state. And women feel that instantly. Nicole noticed something subtle in Thomas during their next interaction. He wasn't leaning in emotionally. He wasn't fishing for reassurance. He wasn't subtly proving he had changed. He was grounded. He was evaluating her. And that inversion changed the energy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. True detachment is mental sovereignty. You are no longer trying to control her perception. You are controlling your internal state. That's rare, and rarity shifts power. When she senses you no longer need her validation, no longer need the relationship to define your worth, she faces a new reality. You are no longer predictable. You are no longer waiting. You are not trying to win her back. You are deciding if she aligns with the man you've become. That uncertainty reactivates pursuit. Let's be honest here. The greatest psychological leverage comes when you are willing to lose. If you are still afraid of losing her permanently, she feels that fear. Fear leaks through micro-reactions, through tone shifts, through urgency. But when you accept loss as a possibility and still stand firm, your energy stabilizes. Epictetus said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." Detachment means you focus on your growth, your discipline, your path. Whatever she chooses is outside your control. Back to Thomas. A few weeks into this new mindset, Nicole's communication increased. Not because he chased, because she sensed distance she could not control anymore. He was no longer trying to be chosen, he had already chosen himself. And that's the shift. If you've ever reached the point where you realized you would be fine with or without her, type this in the comments: I choose myself. Stay with me, because next we're going to break down the final stage that determines whether she simply checks in or comes back fully invested. Number 10. Become the man she fears losing. Now we close this out with the truth most men miss, folks. She does not come back because you waited. She does not come back because you begged. She comes back when she realizes she may have lost something rare. And rarity is not created by tactics. It's created by transformation. Let's reset the frame. All the silence, the absence, the detachment, the rebuilding, the comparison effect, none of it matters if you return to being the same man she walked away from. The real shift happens when you become the man she fears losing. Not fears emotionally, fears realistically, meaning she sees your growth, she senses your independence, she recognizes your composure, she feels your options, and she understands, maybe for the first time, that you are not guaranteed. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What we do now echoes in eternity." Every disciplined choice you made after the breakup either built weight or wasted time. If you strengthened your body, sharpened your mind, elevated your standards, expanded your circle, and stabilized your emotions, you changed your market value. Not in a transactional way, in an energetic way. When she re-enters your orbit and senses that you are no longer centered on her approval, something primal activates. Because now she is not evaluating whether she wants you, she is evaluating whether she still qualifies. Let's be real here. A woman only fears losing a man who does not fear losing her. That's the paradox. When you detach from needing her return, you become grounded. When you become grounded, your presence deepens. When your presence deepens, you feel scarce. Scarcity plus strength equals perceived value, and perceived value drives urgency. But understand this clearly, my friend. You do not become this man to intimidate her. You become this man because your life demanded evolution. Seneca wrote, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." If she comes back and you are still insecure, reactive, and emotionally dependent, the opportunity collapses. If she comes back and you are disciplined, calm, and self-directed, the dynamic transforms. Now she feels tension. Now she feels uncertainty. Now she feels the possibility that you could walk away again and never look back. That's when pursuit shifts. That's when effort increases. That's when investment returns. But here is the final truth. If you truly become the man she fears losing, you may realize something powerful. You no longer fear losing her. And in that space, you don't chase reconciliation. You evaluate it. You don't beg for connection. You decide if it aligns. That is the ultimate power shift, not making her beg, becoming the man who no longer needs her to. And once you reach that level, whether she returns or not, you've already won. All right, folks. Today we broke down the real psychology behind why silence, absence, and self-control can completely shift the dynamic after a breakup. We talked about disappearing without drama, letting silence create tension, stopping validation, seeking triggering comparison, rebuilding your sexual value, and ultimately becoming the man she fears losing. This wasn't about manipulation, it was about transformation. When you stop chasing and start evolving, when you detach emotionally and rebuild your identity, you shift from being the one hoping she returns to being the one she cannot easily replace. And that is power. If you're serious about mastering this level of emotional discipline, attraction, psychology, and stoic masculine growth, join the membership. Inside, we go deeper into strategy, mindset, frameworks, and identity building that we can't fully unpack in public videos. And if this video gave you clarity, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're building men who move with calm strength, not desperation. Thank you for being here, my friend. I'll see you in the next video.